Right, well, let's crack on and cross to Workington and the lovely Lee Mattinson, who's been waiting there patiently at the Carnegie Theatre, who is the writer and brains behind Steel, this fantastic new piece that's just opened at Theatre by the Lake. And we're going to just find out a bit more about where it came from, what's it about, and why we should all go and see it. So, Lee, come off mute, come and say hello. Lovely to have
Hello,
you with us.
thank
Tell us a
you.
bit about yourself, first of all.
I'm Lee. I'm from Waggot originally. I left there when I was 20 to go to Newcastle to do a fine art degree, and I still live there and became a playwright because I didn't know what else to do with my life. And that's it now. So I just write plays for a job now. It's really canny. That, that's me.
Good for you. I salute you. Just getting surviving by doing that is an amazing thing. I know you do many other things as well, and
Yeah.
you're involved in education and learning. The subtext to Steel, or the subtitle rather, that I'm looking at the flyer here says two lads, 12 hours, £1 million. So without
Yeah.
giving away spoilers or whatever, tell us what it's about.
Okay, it's absolutely thrilling. So it's about it's about two 17-year-old lads who live in Workington. And at the start of the play, one of them, James, finds out that he is the heir of 1 mile of the British railway system through his great 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 granddad who worked at the steelworks. And he's basically has one night to find the contract that proves it. So him and his best mate Cameron go on this escapade around Workington, meeting all these wild characters, trying to find this 100-year-old piece of paper that he didn't know existed 4 hours ago. And that's the kind of romp of it. But it's also a love story about these two lads who are deeply in love, but have never had those conversations. So there's a ticking time bomb for the £1 million, but also that's going to likely send James away. So it's their chance to have some difficult conversations about some big ideas. I think that's it.
That sounds good to me. I'll come and
Can you?
see it.
Really can
Um,
it?
I know it was the opening night last night, so in a minute I'm gonna play a little sort of trailer, which is a bit of a behind the scenes film about how some of the material has come together. But
Mhm.
how was it last night?
Yeah, it was great. It's always a weird night, isn't it? You spend so much time in your bedroom telling that story to yourself like a psychopath, and then you kind of put it in front of everyone else and go, "Is it all right?" And it was, to be fair, everyone was really sweet and really canny. So, I was chuffed to bits. It was nice.
I was saying, what's it like to sort of see your piece come to life, in front of an audience, most importantly?
It's brilliant and excruciating at the same time. It's a really vulnerable feeling because the things that you've written down, you think they're brilliant. Do you know what I mean? It's like me going, well, I think that's hilarious, and I think that's going to break your heart, and that's kind of the job. So it's a really weird litmus test, and when it lands, it's incredible. But when people don't laugh at the joke that you thought was dynamite, it's also like, yeah. Can you hear that?
Just only vaguely, only a little
Okay,
bit.
cool. Something just came on. So yeah, no, it was great last night. It was fine. It was good.
And did you have sort of friends and family in the audience for the first night, or are they all going to go to Workington to the Carnegie when it goes there in a few weeks' time?
They're going to come on press night on Tuesday, and then I've also got a gang of people from Workington coming to see the Workington show at the Carnegie because the choir's performing at the Carnegie. So
Okay, well, let's find out a bit more about the choir. I'll play this
brilliant.
little film now, and we'll pick up off the back of this. So I'll just
All
share
right.
my screen
Thank you.
and see what happens.
I kind of belong to a choir, but I wanted something different, and it really, really caught my eye.
I'm a local lass, I'm a Workington girl as well. My granddad was a steel worker, he used to work in the coke ovens down at Moss Bay.
And being part of this has been quite cathartic for me, and it's really chased a few demons away, which is brilliant.
The local history of Workington with a love story, with a story that everybody can identify with. I just thought it was really important.
I really looking forward to seeing it as a member of the audience and see what it comes across like.
All the social aspects of it, meeting new people, it's just been a really good experience.
I think the play is going to shine a light on people who lived in Workington who haven't necessarily had that voice for quite a long time. I think that's a really amazing export.
It's just brilliant. I've loved every minute of it.
Right. As we can see from that, there's quite a lot of um, stuff to do with the choir and people being co-created, if I can put it like that. So tell us a bit about what that aspect is about, Lee, and how that came about.
Yeah, so at the end of the play, and it's not a spoiler, a choir of drag queens and a choir of ex-steelworkers come together and sing a song together. And I'd kind of put it into the play and then badgered Liz at Theatre by the Lake for 3 years because I wanted a choir at the end of the show. And she was like, we can't have a choir at the end of the show. And then about a year ago, the community engagement officer Claire was like, "Oh, maybe we could have a choir and co-create a song, and that could be the song that's sung in the play." And I was like, "Dynamite!" So they set up this gorgeous thing where we would create a community choir in Workington and co-create a song that would be performed at the end of the show. And it was just pure joy. Like I came over to Workington once a week for 10 weeks and just like I can't sing for toffee, but I sang in the choir and it was just a gorgeous time, and it just became a real like story sharing circle as well. And they gave me loads of great stuff that I quickly was crowbarring into the play and stuff.
So you took some of their comments, their observations, what they
Yeah,
wanted to talk about into the song and into the play.
yeah, so I did loads of writing exercises with them, and then what I did, we did a few weeks of that, and then I was like, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to write about 4 different songs, 15 choruses, a few verses, and I just like wrote loads of stuff, laid it all out on the floor, and I was like, right, what's brilliant, what's terrible, let's all kind of jigsaw this together and try and cobble together a song. And that was the process. And then Mark, who's the sound designer, wrote some lovely music, and that's how I'm sure that's how the Beatles did it, but that's certainly how we did it. It was great. It was really good fun. It's just honest storytelling and creation it's just the recipe, isn't it? So I had a lovely time.
And the people that came along to be part of the choir and to support it, did you just put adverts around Workington, or how did they find out about it?
Yeah, they just put a call out and like at different existing choirs, but just like generally as well. So we just had a real mix of people, a mix of talents. We had one lad that just came in off the street on the first session, so I kind of grabbed him in, gave him a cup of tea and a biscuit, and was like, "You're in the choir." So yeah, it was a real like everyone just had a great time because it was like suddenly quickly forming like the gang that you want to be part of. Like it was just lovely and honest, and we were all just making together. So it's just like really beautiful atmosphere. I miss it. I really miss it.
The
So,
spark of the play, had that
mhm.
been around in your head for many, many years, Lee?
Um, the real spark of it I'd had it for about 10 years of the idea that a young lad from Workington, like me, suddenly in a second had some power and had some agency. I think as a young person, I felt like I didn't have any. I'm gay and I grew up here in the 90s, and that was really difficult. And I was just like, I don't quite know where to be or where I fit, or there's no one quite telling me how to be a man unless it's like a really tough one that fights people and then eats a kebab. So I was just like, what if suddenly I kind of had a clue? So I was like, that felt like an exciting stick of dynamite to put in a young lad's hand. So I came up with this kind of mile of steel thing that kind of reached into the past and also reached into his future. So it became quite universal in his themes. And I'd not really thought about it like much. And then I had a meeting with Liz, and I was like, I've got this daft idea about this young lad who might get £1 million, and I'm really intrigued as to what he might suddenly do with some power when he's had none. So, and she got excited by it, and I was really lucky that she commissioned
So,
it.
so Theatre by the Lake, you mentioned Liz Stevenson, the creative director there.
Yeah.
They kind of got involved, and in a way that it feels like they're doing a lot of at the moment, reaching out to community creatives and ideas. That was very much a kind of co-production, not a co-production, but they were very supportive of what you were trying to do, presumably.
Yeah, I went to them just with that idea. I'd met Liz at the Bruntwood Prize at the Royal Exchange, and I went to meet her in Keswick for a coffee, and we were just talking about ideas and just kind of getting to know each other. And I just started talking about that, and she was like, "We'll go away and have a think, and then we'll have another coffee." And it just became really organic and really lovely, and we just kind of like it's that was like 5 years ago, so it's grown really slowly, but it's kind of needed to. Do you know what I mean? There's loads of things have happened in that time that needed to happen, like in the world and in my own life, to really inform the kind of depth, hopefully, of story that it is now.
Fantastic. Amy asks, will the choir continue in any form after the play? Do you know?
I mean, I do hope so. I'm gonna aside from being a writer, I also run a community interest company, and we work with and in communities. So it's on our list to think about how, if they don't continue, or there isn't a continued provision through Theatre by the Lake, that we kind of find a pot of money, and just so I can keep singing Hey Jude on a Wednesday night.
Hey, you said it's breathtaking to see the choir actually perform in the flesh at Keswick a couple of
Yeah.
weeks ago. What was breathtaking about it?
It was partly the way that it was staged, because that little film that we have just watched was played right at the end of the speeches that were sort of marking the 25th anniversary of Theatre by the Lake, because they were sort of looking forward to what's coming next. And they played the film and said, and everybody thought, oh, that's great, that's lovely. And then they lifted the screen and the curtain, and there was the choir behind as a surprise. And that in itself was kind of really powerful. But and then when they sang the song, it's one of those things that will stick with me forever, because it was so authentic and gorgeous. And they were having such fun, and that was just so lovely. So I would recommend the live performances, because if I'm right, Lee, the choir is actually singing in the Carnegie performances in early November.
Yeah, so it's just when they do it at Theatre by the Lake, and on most of the tour, it's just a recording that we did. But then at the Carnegie on the evening of the 2nd and the matinee of the 3rd of November, they're coming, and they've also, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I'm going to say it because it'll entice you. The offer was thrown out to the choir to potentially dress up in some kind of drag and/or steelworker outfits.
We did speak to some people about that afterwards, and there was some trepidation about that, but that is going to be worth turning out for, I suspect.
Are you going to be part of that, Lee? Are you going to be part of that as well?
I absolutely will not be dressed up. No way. I'll be hiding in the toilet.
just before we finish, I'm just noticing on the fly again. So it's Theatre by the Lake opened last night, and then it's going to the Centre in Maryport, the Beggars Theatre in Millham, Florence in Egremont, and then the Carnegie in Workington, and it goes through to the 19th of October. And then is it the sort of piece, Lee? Obviously, there's other steel cities, if I can put it like that, around the country. Is there an ambition to get it to places like Sheffield and Port Talbot and whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a real ambition to do that. I think, it's one of those shows that'll fit in a suitcase, really. It's just a two-hander that features a million characters, but tells a lot of stories as well. So, there is a lot of those. There's a lot of towns like Workington. There's a lot of towns that have been left behind, that have been forgotten, that are full of, untold stories by invisible people. So it kind of digs into all of that. So it should absolutely tour to lots of joyous, gorgeous towns that don't get access to that. So hopefully Workington and Maryport and places are the first of many of those towns getting to see a celebration about those small communities and the power of them, really.
Yeah, fantastic. So Steel, two lads, 12 hours, £1 million.
You've got it.
Whoever came up with that did a great job as well. Was that you, Lee? Right.
No flag on me.
It's a great tagline. I'm going to go and see it next week. Good luck with it, Lee. I'm sure you've got all sorts of other interesting things that you're doing as well. So keep in touch about other projects that you're involved in. And it sounds fabulous, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. So anyone else who gets a chance to see it, have a look at it as well. Yeah, great to have you with us this morning, Lee. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Right, so let's go from Workington to Grisdale Forest, and the lovely Anne Waggot Knott, who has curated an exhibition which opens shortly about some beautiful baskets that people have pulled together. So Anne, I'm going to hand over to you and your slides, which Amy will push forward for you. Tell us a story of 86 baskets.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Tom. And thanks for having me on to explain this lovely exhibition that I'm curating. So just while Amy gets the slides up, thanks, Amy. 86 Baskets is an exhibition of traditional basketry at Grisdale Forest Gallery in South Lakes. It opens next Saturday, the 12th of October, and it runs until the end of November with free entry. And it tells several stories, but mainly the story of 7 basket makers and their tutor, Lorna Singleton, who a number of you will know, as they immerse themselves in ancient Lake District woodland and the kind of really magical historic world of spelt basketry. Could I have the next slide, please, Amy? Thank you. So Lorna's one of a handful of people, a very small handful of people in the UK making traditional oak baskets. And hers is what we call split wood basketry, where you literally split the wood. You use traditional methods to coppice and work it until it's pliable enough to weave. And along with hazel basket making, it's recognised as a critically endangered craft. And Lorna is a yeoman, although she prefers to describe herself as a yeowoman of the Worshipful Company of Basket Makers, and they funded the exhibition. Now, Lorna cuts and prepares the wood by hand, seeing the process all the way through from the tree itself in the forest to the finished product. Next slide, please, Amy. Thank you. So this is a swill, an oak basket from South Cumbria, and this is Lorna's signature make, really. Swills were the backbone of many industries, so we do have a link to coal and steel and things like that. They were used for collecting and transporting all sorts of things like charcoal, coal, potatoes and cockles. And finding an old basket, a historic one, can tell us a lot about how life was in that time and that place. So they're absolutely fascinating. They're primarily functional, but they're also absolutely beautiful and a real reminder of how our intrinsic human connection is with the natural world and natural resources. Next slide, please. So part of Lorna's practice is passing on these skills and keeping the craft alive. And Wood Water Weave is her unique 12-month course where participants come from all over the UK and further afield. There's one from Switzerland on this programme for monthly residential workshops. So over the course of a year, they embed themselves in the seasonal cycles of the forest, and they work to create baskets from oak and hazel and ash. Coppicing the wood all the way through to weaving and finishing the basket. So it's a very involved set of tasks. Next slide, please. And the exhibition tells two intertwined sets of stories, really. Firstly, it explores the processes of working with the three different types of wood, from tree all the way through to basket. There are lots of stages to this process, and they're different for each of the woods because they all behave differently. It's very slow, it slows the pace, it's labour intensive, but all of the participants say it's so incredibly satisfying. Next slide, please. So I love this picture. This is some material being soaked in a forest stream prior to being worked into something that is capable of weaving. And I love this picture because it really demonstrates how Lorna works with the natural environment at so many different steps of the process. Next slide, please. And this is a beautiful picture of Lorna peeling some wood. And I love this one because it shows how satisfying a process this can be when you get it absolutely right and you get the feel of working with and not against the wood itself. Next slide, please. The next slide this is Michelle, one of the course participants, getting started with the shave horse, so starting to work the wood into more of a weavable strip. And the second photograph shows this feeling of satisfaction of having worked really hard on a piece of wood until it's pliable and it's ready to be woven. Next slide, please. The next slide shows Simon and Rachel. Further on in a different process, they're working on some really quite contemporary work, so using the historic methods to make some much more modern pieces, in this case, lamp structures. And you can see Simon working on something really, really intricate there, and Rachel working on something kind of big and flamboyant and creative. Simon's a GP, and he came on this course so that he could detach himself from the burnout he suffered after COVID and really just kind of ground himself in the natural world and work with his hands, which he's found just so incredibly beneficial. And Rachel comes from a fine art background. She's not a crafter necessarily. So she's brought a lot of real creativity to the processes, and she's actually started making baskets from seaweed since the course has finished. So some fascinating people involved. Next slide, please. This beautiful basket is a finished two-hooper, and this is derived from a Swedish design. So this sort of thing would have been used for collecting berries or storing wool because it's shaped so you can stuff loads of things in there and they won't spill out. So very, very functional. Next slide, please, Amy. The second set of stories we're telling is the story of this group of people, their individual journeys, which I've alluded to a little bit already, journeys with the craft and their collective journey as a group together in and with the woodland. And everyone's come with a different perspective, a different background from different reasons. And after 12 months of really being immersed in this world, they've got some fascinating insights, which I've tried to draw out as part of the exhibition narrative. Next slide, please. And here they are, all of them, with Owen Jones, who I see somebody has just mentioned in the comments, and I'll come to Owen in a minute. They're all on a high after completing their first swills. Such hard work, such beautiful pieces. They're a really lovely bunch, and it's been such a pleasure to get to know them. But on a serious note, traditional basketry now has this huge bearing on the way they all move through the world and on their relationship with nature. And it's really encouraging to see young craftspeople heavily involved in this as well. I find it incredibly moving to hear how this kind of the intimacy with their materials really connects them on an emotional level with each other and also with the forest. Owen is somebody who has taught Lorna. So the participants are learning from Lorna, but they're also spending time with Owen. And one of the first teaching pictures I showed you was them in Owen's amazing workshop, which is just so historic and atmospheric and full of knowledge and expertise and fabulous materials and tools. And they speak so fondly of that. And that's a real manifestation of this knowledge being passed down from craftsperson to craftsperson. It's absolutely wonderful.
Is that Owen on the right, Anne?
Yes, sorry, that's Owen on the right. And yeah, I should actually say it was a huge honor as well to be invited to curate this. It's really, really special. And I've learned absolutely loads. And I felt a real responsibility with this to kind of really carefully carry these beautiful pieces of craft, but also the stories that are so special and so personal to all of the people involved and to the woodlands in which they're working. And as some of you will know, group shows can often be really, really challenging to put together, especially when people are spread all over the country. But the craft element gives this group this kind of unspoken sort of elemental connection, a sort of grounding force that has helped everything it's just coming together really, really well. So it's been such a pleasure to be involved. Could I have the next and final slide, please, Amy? Thank you. So yeah, I hope you'll come and see it, and please do spread the word to anyone you think might be interested. We're including a co-creating station in the exhibition where you can come and have a go at weaving using various recycled materials that we've collected locally. And for those of you that don't know Forestry England's Grisdale Forest, it offers a fabulous day out with loads of walking. There's a great sculpture trail, mountain biking, a cafe, and all sorts of other woodland activities. So we've prepared this for a basket work audience who will be really super interested in the technical detail, but also for a very public audience as well. And we have a few spaces left on the preview. So if anybody would like to come, the QR code that's just disappeared takes you to the link for that. But you can also sign up through Lorna's website, and I will put the link in the chat as well. The next Woodwater Weave course, if anybody has been hooked by that or is interested, is open for registrations now as well on Lorna's website. And she's really open to people just contacting her for a chat about it and about how it all works. So thank you very much, and hope to see some of you at the exhibition or at the preview next Friday. And you feel free to ask me some questions, but don't ask me technical questions about basket making.
Thank you, Anne. I was lucky enough. I was down, actually. I saw Laura about 10 days ago when I was staying in Ulverston for a few days. And I nipped up to Grisdale Forest and hooked up with her. And her workshop is a beautiful thing in itself. It's a beautiful place of refuge and peace and creativity in itself. So if you ever go to Grisdale Forest, and if she's not there, she sort of has a little notice on the door saying, "Give me a call. I might just be able to pop round and say hello." And that's what happened when I was there a couple of weeks
she
ago.
might be out on her quad bike with her chainsaw somewhere nearby.
Yeah, she could be doing anything, couldn't she? She lives an active life.
Yeah, and there are a number of art and craft studios with people working at Grisdale Forest. Actually, it's quite a lovely arts offer. So it's definitely worth popping in.
So this isn't a technical question necessarily, Anne, but it might trip you up still. I hope so,
Thanks.
obviously. What are the baskets? What historically have they been used for, and what might they be used for, in a current situation?
Oh, that's interesting. So swills, for example, they were used to transport and collect all sorts of things. They were used to take coal down to the steamships and so on for export. They were used for cockling. They were used on farms in agriculture for vegetables, for potatoes and turnips and things like going up into the fells to collect bracken and stuff like that. So they had a myriad of uses, and they were very specific to, well, what really is old Lancashire, so South Cumbria and that particular area. So they have a really good connection to place, that's very important. And that's why it's important that Lorna and Owen, they still work there, but they're disseminating this all over the country. So these makers are from Switzerland, Scotland, the Southwest, Wales, all over the place. So that knowledge is spreading, which is lovely. And I think I mentioned the two hooper as well, which is a basket. It's a round, sort of almost spherical basket with a small opening. And that's, if you imagine stuffing lots of wool into a basket, it's got this small opening, so it won't just all come out again. And things like that were also used for collecting, for foraging berries and things like that too. But nowadays you can use them for anything. There's one of the last baskets they made on the course is a lal yak basket, which is basically like a beautiful handbag basket. And they've all done their own leather work on them as well. So incredible things. And they're robust because they're made of hardwood. They're robust things that you can use every day.
Yeah, there's one hanging up in the back of her workshop, which I think says is about 100 years old.
Yeah, that's right.
That she's got and I'm just seeing that Harriet has got one and used it as a cradle for her son, who's now 27. So that's a good, excellent usage as well.
What a lovely story, Harriet.
Carrying washing out to the line and back. Another excellent usage, Harriet. And that's interesting too. The old bobbin mills used them for bobbins too, because again, it was a big bobbin mill area around that part of the world. That's really interesting. They are things of beauty in themselves. And did these protagonists on the course, and would they meet kind of once a month, or did they all sort of do 2 weeks together at the same time, or how did that all work out?
Yeah, so it's slow and seasonal. So they meet for I think it's a long weekend once a month over the 12 months, and it means they get all of the processes at all of the right times of year. So they're really embedded with the seasons. But that also gives them a really great opportunity to gel as a group as well. They're a real crew now. They're very, very tight. And that added sort of social value of it, I think, has been really intrinsic for them.
Yeah, fantastic. Julie, you use yours for wood by the fire and a smaller one for kindling. How lovely. I've got your fireplace in my mind already. Scarves in Sue's. That's just really nice. I feel like I haven't got one. I've got one of Lorna's kind of spatulas that I got from her, but I haven't got a swill basket, and I kind of feel like there's a hole in my life now.
They're a brilliant investment for so many reasons.
All right. Well, lovely. I hope to be there, Anne, next week. So I hope to catch up with you then. And as Harriet says, everyone needs a swill. Really, really lovely photographs for that presentation as well, Anne. Thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah, some of those, the beautiful ones came from, I can't remember her name. Tyree Dawn, I think, runs a company called Random Chair, who's done a lot of lovely photography for Lorna. So I should mention that. And then some of them are participant photos as well.
Yeah, great stuff. Lovely, lovely, happy looking people. Thank you very much, Anne. Great to see you again.
Thank you.
And I commend that to everybody. Right, let's move from Grisdale Forest to Keswick and Keswick Museum and sensory collections and how we can make stuff more accessible. Now, Nicola Lawson knows far more about it than I do, and Jane is on the call as well. So, Nicola, we'll get your slides up and tell us the story of how you've got involved in this and what it's about and why it's making the world a better place.
Thanks, Tom. And yeah, thanks for having me. Very excited to talk about this project. So it's a fairly new initiative. As Tom said earlier, we're a pilot partner, so very much at the start and sort of testing things to see if things work out. But we're one of a few. So this is sort of, I'll tell you a bit about the overall research project and then how it's working currently at Keswick. So if I could have the next slide, please, Amy. Thank you. So the Sensational Museum, I've put the website there and it'll come up later on in the slideshow as well. But basically, it's a research project funded by the AHRC. It's already been running for quite a while, and other museums and researchers have developed it to this point. And basically, they're now at the stage that they want to test that in real life and see how all their great theories that they've developed and toolkits work practically in a museum setting. So it's been developed by a multi-institutional team pulled from heritage organisations, disability advocacy organisations and academics across different universities. And the whole idea is to challenge the biases inherent in museums. So this is something that I hadn't really thought about before. Museums are incredibly site-dependent places. You look at objects, you read panels, and there's not a lot of involvement from your other senses. Sometimes you have an audio guide, but generally we really expect people to rely on sight. So the idea with this project is to improve accessibility for everyone based on the idea of disability gain. So the fact that changing the way that we do things with different people's needs in mind can benefit everybody. So it might not be that you are visually impaired, but it might be that you learn better from hearing things than from seeing things, or from touching things, feeling the weight of things. So the idea behind the project is basically that no one sense is sufficient. It's not that we're moving from sight to hearing, it's that people should be able to engage in the way that they feel most comfortable, and that will make them most interested, basically, because that's what we want. So there are two strands to the project, which I'll talk a little bit about. One about how we behind the scenes work with our collections, and one that is more public focused. So if I could have the next slide, please. Why us? We got involved because last year we took part in the Museum Development North Access for All cohort, and we were a partner in the Helping Hands project. And through both of those projects running at the same time, we really developed our accessibility, and realised sort of what we needed to do to improve our offer for everybody. It's obviously a long process. I'm not saying that we're, going to fix everything right all at once, but it led us to apply for this project when we saw it advertised. So our current projects as well have a new focus on co-curation with members of the public. And we're trying to bring people into us a lot more. So it's not top down. We're telling them about history. We're listening to their experiences and their observations about the displays that we have. And we're also looking, as I say, at building on that previous experience to improve our accessibility. So this ties in really nicely with building on what we've done previously and what we're doing at the moment. So we signed up to be a pilot partner, which is essentially testing the toolkits and demonstrating how it might work in a setting, and feeding back anything that doesn't work for us practically on the ground. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I won't go into this in much detail because it's very internal, but the idea with the collection strand is that we're going to, as a staff team, rethink how we document museums. So we keep obviously a lot of records about what something is, so that we can use it in different ways. But that is very much a brief description, often a photograph, again, very visual, very traditional things that we record. So the idea with this is one of the researchers described it as Facebook for objects. So the idea is a little bit more that you're collecting other pieces of sensory information about that, maybe how it smells, how it tastes, how it makes you feel. We haven't started the strand yet. That is next week. So I can't give too much more information about that because I haven't done it yet, but it's really exciting and hopefully will just help us completely rethink the way that we do things. Next slide, please. But the part I really want to tell you guys about today is the communication strand. So what this is going to end up with is a multisensory intervention. So basically an installation in the galleries designed by a group of 5 to 8 people who identify as deaf, disabled, and/or neurodivergent. And the idea is to have a range of experiences within that group, so that, again, we're coming back to this idea that no one sense is sufficient. People will feed in their own experiences and their own preferred ways of experiencing museums, and then design, working through workshops with us, they will design a brief for a designer to physically make an installation. We don't know what that's going to be. We're going to work through this process with them, but the decision will be theirs. And we're all really excited to see how that works out. So there'll be 4 workshops over the autumn for this group. And then in February next year, we'll have the installation in the galleries. So at the moment, we're currently in the process of recruiting people for this group. So if I could have the next slide, please. We're putting a call out to get involved. So if you are or know anybody who would be interested, please ask for some more information, get in touch with me. If you identify as deaf, disabled and or neurodivergent, we can pay expenses, and everybody who gets involved will get a £40 thank you voucher for each session. And like I say, it's going to be 4 sessions over the autumn. We haven't fixed the time for those yet, so hopefully can be fairly flexible. And we're going to do some drop-in taster sessions so that you can get to know us, get to know a bit more about the project before you commit to getting involved. So those are going to be next week on the 9th of October. We've got one in the evening, 6 till 7:30. And on the 11th of October, Saturday, we've got one in the middle of the day, 11 till 1. But if you just get in touch with me or go on our website. In fact, I've got the website on the next slide. Yeah, if I could go to the final slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, so that's the link. We've got some more information at our website. If you want to find out more about the project as a whole and its aims, there's a Sensational Museum website. But we'd love to hear from you or anyone who might be interested, might like to get involved, or just wants to know more. Really, we're also keen to spread the word about this. You know, it is something that we're hoping will have a knock-on effect on the wider sector over time, and we're really excited to be able to contribute to that in a small way. So yeah, thank you. Please feel free to ask me any questions.
And presumably part of the ambition of the project is to influence other museums in due course.
Yeah, absolutely. So this sort of testing is testing of a lot of guidance and toolkits. And then we work through that process within the museum and feed back to the designers as to what went well, what needs a bit more work, what doesn't work practically on the ground with all of our other competing demands, or what was actually really useful to set aside time to look into. So we've already done some internal training, which has been incredibly helpful in just refocusing how we think. So yeah, absolutely. When we feed this back at the end of this project, they will, I think, go back and sort of redraft the guidance and the toolkits with the idea of rolling that out across the wider sector and hopefully getting this out into a lot more museums.
Great, lovely stuff. And Anne, messy access, that's a great little phrase, isn't it? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I was working with a collective actually out in Estonia recently, and we talked a lot about messy access, and it's a term they use on a project in Berlin where they recognize that we can't make everything accessible to everybody straight away all of the time, often because a lot of arts organizations don't always have the resources to do that. But it's a commitment to being on a journey, to experimenting and being inclusive and just seeing what we can do, so that it's not, there's not a defined end to it. We are not now accessible, but we are constantly working towards it. And by calling it messy access, I think it gives you room for experimentation and failure and learning, which is really, really important. But that's absolutely brilliant to hear about that program at Keswick. Yeah, lovely. Look forward to hearing more.
Oh, thanks, Sad. And that's lovely to hear about messy access as well. That's not a phrase I'd come across, but that is exactly it. As we've gone through this process, you do start out thinking, oh, we're going to become accessible for everyone. And then you realize, yeah, that's impossible to do that all the time. But yeah, we absolutely want to make that clear that we're making a commitment to improving and to widening that access. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Nicola. Really nice to hear that story. And nice. Yeah, a lot of people would have been involved in the Helping Hands project on this call in some way, shape or form. So nice to see a bit of legacy from that, I think, as Kate has put into chat there.
Yeah,
as well.
Absolutely. That's been a huge influence on our organisation. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Good. All right, lovely. Thanks very much indeed. And be interested to see where that goes and what the learnings are and how that potentially influences other places in Cumbria and beyond in due course. Thank you very much, Nicola. Lovely to hear from you.
Thank you.
Right, so let's just move towards the last 10 minutes of the call now. But have I saved the best till last, perhaps? I don't know. It's all been great. But anyway, Half-Lives Gathering the Flow, a great exhibition currently on at Florence, which Harriet and Rob Fraser have helped curate and pull together. And we're going to find out a bit more about it. I was lucky enough to go there a couple of weeks ago and was blown away, particularly by Alistair's work, actually, if I'm honest with you. But Harriet, tell us about it and how it's come about and where it's at the moment. And I think we've got one or two slides that you've kindly shared, which Amy will put on the screen as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. And well, great stuff today. It's been brilliant to be back after a bit of a break. So yeah, I really enjoyed hearing stuff today. So back in 2022, there was an award made for 3 artists to be residents in the west of Cumbria. It was part of the Cumberland's Coastal Programme. Back then, it was still Copeland Borough Council. Now it's Cumberland. And it's an Arts Council funded programme, and it was brought together by a curator called Aldo Rinaldi. And I got involved through my work with the Place Collective, which Rob and I founded, connected with the Centre for National Parks and Protected Areas at the University of Cumbria. And the programme wanted to set up an opportunity for 3 artists to carry out research in the coastal area of Cumbria, and also liaise with academics at the University of Cumbria. So it was very much like a research-focused project. And the 3 artists who were selected, Alistair Debling, Jamie and Christina, have finally been able to come together and show their work at an exhibition at Florence Arts Centre, which is a really lovely location for what they've done. They spent time kind of embedding themselves in the area, really, and just gathering stories and using their particular practices to get their own perspective on things. So maybe the next slide, please, Amy. Just to give an overview. So I'm sure a lot of people on this call know Florence Arts Centre. This is one of the views from the main exhibition space. And you can see that it's beautifully spaced, actually. And the artists, there's this incredible cohesion between their work, which wasn't really intentional, but they've decided not to kind of fall into the romantic way of looking at landscape or the kind of the Lake District story. Much more of a focus on the lived landscape, the industrial heritage, past, present, and possible futures for the area, with mining, with Sellafield, with maritime and farming industries. So I'm just trying to remember which order I put these slides in. So I'll next slide, please. So this is a view of the film. Christina Peachy has made a film. Her ambition was to make a film that showed on 3 large screens, but for the sake of the available single screen at Florence Arts Centre, she's put it into 1 screen. So there's 3 different images showing side by side. It's a 16-minute film. And she's really interested in kind of mixing fictional storytelling with documentary, and she used the water as the medium to tell the story of what she encountered on the West Coast. And she also worked with Dr. Jill Notman, who's a freshwater ecologist at the University of Cumbria, and ended up exploring the life in water. And she went out with on a very dodgy looking boat journey out to the wind farms off the coast as well. And she uses sound in a very beautiful way. So you've got these 3 images, but you've also got 3 sets of sounds going on. So that's Christina's film. Christina's from Italy. Next slide, please. Okay, so Alistair Debling, he's brought a film to his work as well as some still images. And this is people watching his film. This is called Half-Lives. And Alistair's really kind of interested in queer ecologies, kind of getting over binary perspectives on things and just looking at stuff in a different way. He spent time talking to people from the LGBTQ+ network at Sellafield, and he's toyed with this idea of half-lives in nuclear decommissioning process, the nuclear industry, and being queer, gay, just trying to find senses of what persists, identity, belonging, really, really powerful work, and I really recommend you go and see it. Next slide, please. This is a close-up of the audio work that Jamie Jenkinson has done. Jamie's an artist based in Morecambe, and he's used a what's it called? 5-point surround sound installation, playing on the ideas of cairns and stone circles, and he spent time gathering sounds, interviews, ambient sounds, and you go and stand in the middle of this thing, and it's beautifully immersive. Again, I recommend you make time to go and do that. The little picture on the right is one of the spirits of Copeland from one of the workshops that Jamie ran. Next slide, please, because I'm running out of time, I can tell. This is looking at some of Alistair's work, and he's brought in photographs that are slowly disintegrating, and you may see them, you may not see them. So it depends if you get there in time. Next slide, please. That shows Alistair pouring beetroot dye into one of his image trays there. I hear from Sue that the pictures are disintegrating, which is exactly what he wanted to happen. Just playing with this idea of what lasts, what can we see, what do we recognize, what do we capture? Next slide, please. This is a view of the opening, and there's Christina talking about her film. Jamie's on the right, Alistair on the left there. It was a lovely evening, and I think everybody there probably wanted to come back so they could spend more time, because it is quite an immersive exhibition. I think you do need a little bit of time to just plug in, listen, sit down and reflect. Next slide, please. That's an image that Christina took when we finally got stuff up on the wall and we could smile. And next slide, please.
Rob's legs.
Yeah, aren't they great? Rob says hello, by the way. That's just to say where it is. It's at Florence Arts Centre. What I haven't put on that slide is that Florence Arts Centre is open Friday 11 till 4, Saturday 11 till 3, and Sunday 11 till 3. And the exhibition's on until October the 13th. Look, that's my timer. How cool is that?
Very well, Harriet. Excellent work.
I don't know how to turn it off.
It's going to explode unless you turn it off.
And just very briefly, next week we've got a small conference arranged for the University of Cumbria students, and we're getting all the artists in to talk to the students about process, place-based artwork, and what comes next. So
Great.
Looking forward to that.
That'll be educational and interesting as well. Yeah, really enjoyed it when I saw the stuff there. And as I say, I was blown away by Alistair's film about half-lives. It's such a clever concept, and some of the interviews he's done with people from the Sellafield community are really, really open and honest, and quite difficult sometimes to listen to, but fascinating as a result. And I really, really enjoyed that aspect of the exhibition. But it's all good.
Yeah, and it resonates with what Lee was saying about
totally.
Do you belong? Where do you belong? And how do you deal with that kind of thing? So, and that's over many, many decades.
Yeah, for sure. Lovely stuff. I'm just going to share one more thing with you, which Amy doesn't know I'm about to do. And that is just as I referred to at the start of the call, this is the next big meet. So this is an opportunity to get a lovely free lunch, to actually see people in the flesh, face to face. That image behind, there's Rachel, there's Simon, is from the last big meet we had, which was at Waggot. This will be at the University of Cumbria in Carlisle. And that's the question we're focusing in on. How can we help young people to build a creative career in Cumbria? The whole of that week, there's a national piece of work going on about creativity and young people. And so we're kind of using that as a bit of a hook. But I'm pulling together that meeting now. Some really interesting people will be there. And in the afternoon of that day, also a chance for young people to do a kind of speed dating with people in the creative and cultural sector to find out how people got to where they got to in Cumbria at the moment. So again, if you're able to make that 21st of November, I can guarantee it should be worth your while getting to Carlisle and taking part of that. It'll probably be a 9:30, 10 o'clock start through till lunchtime. And then if you want to stick around in the afternoon, you can as well, and a nice lunch too. So that's 21st of November. Stick it in your diary if you're around. 29 minutes past 10. Kate, anything else to say?
Yes, don't forget the 9th of October in Keswick at the Quaker meeting rooms. Your art is your business. Fantastic session learning from Sita Brand from Settle Stories about how to make your creative or freelance practice flourish and be sustainable as a business. And I heartily recommend it. And there are some places left, so please do get booking on. It's all very affordable. It's open to people who live, work, or practice in Cumberland.
Thank you. And yes, Zoe, there will be an opportunity to feedback. I might even make a podcast about the meeting. So we'll see what happens, but certainly we'll be talking about it and hopefully achieving some things as well as just talking about things. Lovely. Thank you so much to Lee, to Anne, to Nicola, and to Harriet for entertaining us and educating us this morning. It's been really, really interesting. And thank you to everybody else for your time and attention as well. Lovely to see you all. Next week, we are going to hear from Lewis. I've scribbled his name down here and I can't actually read it.
Lewis Martins,
who's the new interim chief executive of Lakeland Arts. And also, we're going to be hearing about some opportunities at Wordsworth Grasmere for some visitor trainees looking after visitors at Wordsworth Grasmere. But Lewis should be a really interesting chap. I haven't spoken to him yet, but should be a really interesting chap to listen to. Looking forward to that. Nick Greenall, I'll be in touch with you about the Sill and the Sycamore Gap exhibition. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy whatever sunshine you may get and catch you all again soon.